Please remember to like, subscribe and comment, as we love to hear back from our viewers. Also, if you enjoy our videos, please consider becoming a patron of our show through Patreon and or GoFundMe. Links are listed below the video in the description. From the deepest, darkest recesses of Dangerous Nerds headquarters, Keith Moncrief and Gerry Kissell.
Let's get the serious look. That's Keith. That's Gerry. This is Pop Culture Minefield. Hey man, it's Friday. It's been a long week. We went through some nasty weather this week. We had tornadoes. Almost ended up in a storm shelter at one point. The siren was going off next to the house.
Wow.
So, and then like I put the video up on my Facebook page of the river running in front of our house. The flooding was just, and we're up in the city. So if it's that bad where we're at, and once we drove home to Springfield, it was like we kept looking off on the side of the highway and just flooding everywhere. That was a nasty storm. So anyway, happy Friday, guys. Fridays are now going to be dedicated to talking about a particular film that we like, but we're going to start off first with a little bit of news, which is it was announced that McG is developing a TV series based on true lives.
What?
Yeah. And if you think I look excited, you would be wrong. I think that since Charlie's Angels, I've really not liked a damn thing he's done. I don't think he's very good. He ruined Magnum P.I. I'm hoping that show gets a second season, because as much as I hate the show, I think if they get a good showrunner, that is an excellent cast. It's an excellent cast. Even though I'm not happy about the casting of Thomas Magnum, the guy grew on me, and I actually like that kid. He's really short, and not Thomas Magnum, but he's something. And I enjoy watching him in the way he interacts with the other characters. But the best casting is Rick and TC.
Yeah.
And of course, the real TC, I forget his name, he's on the show now as a barber.
Oh.
And so I hope they do the same thing with some of the other surviving cast to get them on the show. Because that is just awesome to see them getting work, and on top of that, connected to a show that was my favorite show on TV until it ended, Magnum P.I.
Long run.
Did you like the show?
Oh, yeah. Long run for that show. I like the fact...
8 years? 9 years?
8 years.
And I don't think it needed to end. They ended it. They chose to end it.
Yeah.
Because the ratings were still through the roof.
It was the actors and stuff. They chose to end it.
And I loved how they did it. What was sad is that, of course, Orson Welles died going into the third season. So we could never really reveal Robin Masters.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the twist at the end, which is Higgins finally admits, yes, I'm Robin Masters, only to later pull the rug out from under Magnum and go, I was only messing with you, Thomas. I'm not. And then you're like, oh!
I like the fact that the show had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
It was one of the few shows that I ever saw that didn't lose its realism, despite the fact the main character broke the fourth wall on a regular basis and would look right at the camera and just go, pull a Stan and Ollie thing where when Oliver would turn and look at the camera and go,
Big time. But it was a good show. It was well written, well acted.
It was also written by a veteran, writing about veterans. And that's one of the things that bugs me is when you get these shows, and there are tons of veterans out there, military veterans that could be writing on these shows, and they don't hire them to help bring that realism to a veteran character. But I do appreciate still the attempt that they make on this current iteration of honoring veterans. And because it was a big part of Thomas Magnum. And a lot of people, were like angry when the show first started, the new one. They're like, "Oh, now he's a Navy SEAL." I'm like, going, "What are you talking about? He's always a Navy SEAL." Did you not watch the original series? It was stated in the first pilot episode, which, by the way, in the first pilot episode of the original, had 2 people I knew from high school in it. And in fact, it's his birthday today, Judge Reinhold's birthday. Actually, no, I'm sorry, not today, but it was this week.
Yeah.
But his was right after mine. And Judge Reinhold, he was a senior when I was a freshman. And W.K. Stratton from Baba Black Sheep was a little young blonde guy. He was also an Airwolf.
Yeah.
And both of them went to our high school.
Wow.
James Monroe High School in Fredericksburg. If you look us up on Wikipedia, I'm listed as a person of interest.
It's a person to know. Well, to go with that Judge Reinhold story, this week was also the 32nd anniversary of the release of Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Yes. Love that. And I love the fact that we're hearing more rumors of a new movie. And I'm hoping Judge Reinhold's in it. Judge, of course, and W.K. Stratton are in the pilot episode of Magnum P.I.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, they do a scene where they walk and talk to each other for one moment and then go on. Because Judge is actually like the CQ.
Mm-hmm.
And W.K. plays the officer that's escorting somebody, talks to him, and then goes on. And I'm like, I couldn't help but wonder, and I've never had a chance to ask, did you guys realize you were from the same high school and only a couple of classes apart when you did that scene? I mean, the odds of 2 guys from Fredericksburg being on the same show.
Winding up in Hawaii together.
In Hawaii on the same pilot for the same show. It was pretty, I don't know. All of us back in Fredericksburg lost our minds. We're like, we know that.
Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah, buddy. And of course, Judge Reinhold is also listed on Wikipedia as a person of note from high school, too. But I'm number 1. I am. It's weird. I don't know why. I've not done shit. Just a few comic books, and I worked on a couple of movies. Why am I a person of note from that high school? I don't know. But anyway, what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about a movie or a TV series. What are we talking about this week?
This week,
let's get off of Magnum P.I. as much as I love that.
Yeah. Well, this week I think we can talk about. Let's go ahead and just talk about movie, and specifically, it being the 40th anniversary of the release of Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture is such a. I know as much for you as it was for me.
Yeah.
It changed everything because I was a Star Trek fan first, and then Star Wars came out in '77, and Paramount made the decision that they wanted a Star Wars film.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got? We got Star Trek. They were going to do a series that ended up not happening called Phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Nimoy was not on board for it.
Yep.
Nimoy was not on board. So Captain Kirk was going to have another Vulcan character. And I've seen some footage of the guy in photos, and I was not too keen on it. And I think that's half of the reason why, because Nimoy has an air about him.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that plays a strong Vulcan character has that stoicism. Because once again, there it is, that word stoicism I used yesterday. Stoicism is so important for Vulcans because that is part of their philosophy. And without Spock, any Star Trek at that point was going to fail.
Yeah.
Kirk can't carry it. As big a character as Kirk is. Now, I'm trying to remember how they lured, because there is information on how they got Nimoy to agree.
Well, for one thing, it was all about. One of the reasons was it was a film. The other reason it was really who they assigned from Paramount.
Oh, Robert, the gentleman that directed the Sand Pebbles and the musical West Side Story, Robert Weiss.
Yeah, Robert Weiss. But the other the guy that actually headed everything up was the future head of animation for Disney the decade following, which was
this is you're watching right now just a conversation between him and me. This is what it's like. We're older and we forget shit.
Yeah, we forget a lot of stuff.
So we just sit and we talk until we remember.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Jeffrey Katzenberg, that's right.
Now, his big thing wasn't really filmmaking. He initially came out of PR. And they gave him the assignment to help re-energize Star Trek. So he was the engine behind it that got all the pieces in place to be able to make the movie. And when Katzenberg did such a good job, that was also reflected well on his good buddy, who was Michael Eisner.
Yep, Michael Eisner.
And the two of them left Paramount.
Now, if you don't recognize those names, the two of them would eventually partner with Steven Spielberg and create it.
Not quite. Not the two of them. Only one of them. Katzenberg would eventually team with him. The other one was Geffen.
I got him confused. That's right.
It was DreamWorks SKG.
Yep. But going back, the other thing I want to point out is a wonderful woman that I'm going to hopefully tag when I post this on Facebook, who I've known for years.
Yeah.
I met her in the 90s, was Bijo Trimble.
Oh.
And Bijo, Betty Jo, Bijo to friends and to Star Trek fans worldwide, is the person who almost single-handedly kept Star Trek alive.
Mm-hmm.
She did for Star Trek what Blade Zone did for Blade Runner. Blade Zone kept Blade Runner alive from the mid-90s all the way up into the 2000s until it got so popular they could finally release the final cut.
Yep. And
Bijo did the same thing for Star Trek. And she kept it going. She was present. She's in the movie. She's in that big conference room scene where they're in the big room. Yep. She's also present when the crew was invited to the launch or the flight with the Enterprise.
Yep.
On the back of the 747.
Naming of the space shuttle.
That's right.
Yep.
So, Bijo is an influential, important person in the history of Star Trek. And Star Trek the Motion Picture would not have happened if not for the hard, diligent work of that woman. And that's it, period. And I love that woman. She's amazing. I've read everything she's ever put out, and I've talked to her many times. She's wonderful, wonderful person, and a friend.
The remarkable thing, though, about that movie is the film comes out in 1979. 1969 is when the show was officially canceled by NBC. So you're literally talking 10 years. Now, realistically, filming on Star Trek the Motion Picture took almost a year. So they started work in 1978. So really, that entire cast was outside the realm of Star Trek, not counting what they did for the animated series that came out in 73. But they were out of it for at least 9 years before they were able to get back into these characters. And
the thing that sucks, though, is that Robert Weiss is as amazing a director as this guy was. Sand Pebbles is one of the greatest films ever made. Period. West Side Story.
The Day the Earth
Stood
Still.
Film. Oh my God, that's right. Yes, he made one of the single most important, significant science fiction films in the history of science fiction. Day the Earth Stood Still. And
the people from Star Trek Discovery need to watch that so they can learn how to write science fiction.
There you go. But I got to tell you, Robert Weiss didn't understand Star Trek, is the problem. He understood science fiction, and he understood stories. Because he was a very good director and a very good writer. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, he didn't understand the Star Trek characters. Mm-hmm. And that's why when you watch the film, something feels off while you're watching it, because you're not seeing the animated characters. When I say animated, I mean the figurative word, in that they're not moving in the way that they normally did. They don't talk the way that they normally did on the show. Yeah. And so therefore, and it was brought up by the cast. Mm-hmm. They were saying that, this isn't the way, and Robert Weiss was the director, and he was old school. You did what you were told to do.
Well, plus it was Robert Weiss. By the time he started working on Star Trek the Motion Picture, he was Robert Weiss. So everybody wanted to work with him, and you did what you were told.
Yeah, and it's one of the few times you'll see a major crew like this not argue with the director. Because Robert Weiss was, well, like you said, Robert Weiss. Mm-hmm. He was the man.
And at least for the the main three actors.
That's Oscar-winning Robert Wise.
At least for the top three actors in the film, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and DeForest Kelley, there was the distinct possibility that they might not have been cast in the film. There had been talk of actually getting major actors to portray the top three parts. And the three actors they were looking at were, they were looking at Robert Redford for Kirk. Could have worked. It could have worked. They were also looking at, they were looking at actor...
basically what you're saying is they were looking at just rebooting it as a film, as a new film franchise, with a whole new cast.
With a whole new cast, with a more of a bigger name cast. Because really, those actors weren't really that well known outside of the Star Trek fandom for too much. And having big name actors, having people, like Walter Matthau, who was up for the part of Bones McCoy. He was looking at taking over the Bones role, which I think would have worked.
I would have liked that. And I'm a big DeForest Kelley fan. But I would have enjoyed, that's interesting because that would have changed the entire landscape for all of us. I don't know, would the franchise have survived with that a new cast?
It definitely would have been different.
Do you think we would have seen another Star Trek if we had gotten big name actors in it?
If we had gotten big name actors, I think the studio would have been much more involved than it actually would have been. I mean, than it actually was for this film. So you would have gotten nearly a completely different film. And at that time, it would have been so different from what young people like we were at that time were wanting to see out of movies, i.e. anything that was remotely science fiction was going to be compared to Star Wars no matter what.
Who are they looking at for Spock?
Let's see, Academy Award winner, ironically an actor who he and Leonard Nimoy fought for the same part years ago, of Mr. Spock. They were both up for Spock, and Nimoy got it.
Who was it?
It was actor, I could see him, Martin Landau.
Ah, yeah. Martin Landau would have been a good Spock.
So it was going to be...
he had that same elongated face. A face that was not the perfect face for later Bela Lugosi. Mm-hmm. Because Lugosi had a square head, mm-hmm. whereas Landau's long like Nimoy. And
but Landau is a major name in Hollywood history because he technically was the first Bond henchman. North by Northwest is considered to be the film that started the Bond franchise, and so the basic formula for all the Bond
James Mason talks like this, basically an English accent, and you strain like you got to poop. That's how you sound like James Mason.
And that's good.
It is. That's how you do it. You do an English accent and then strain like you got to poop.
He would have been an interesting Bond villain.
Well, if you look at it, because I remember the film, he really is a Bond villain.
Yeah, the formula...
Mason's character is absolutely the main guy, and Martin Landau is such a good henchman in that
mm-hmm.
film. And it has great Bond villain death.
Yeah. Again, watch it if you've never seen it. If we ever bring up anything like that, I know we're old as hell, but you got to, watch this.
Where is old as sin? Which sin, Grandpa? I don't know. The one made of onions.
North by Northwest. Check it out.
It's a great film. Hitchcock at his best. And like I said, Martin Landau dies falling off of Mount Rushmore. And it's...
Spoiler alert.
It's a great film. If you've not seen that film, you're sad. You're sad. You're a sad person. But with Star Trek, going back to Star Trek,
Yeah.
there were a lot of things that were interesting about it because, like, when they released it for TV,
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the big moments was we heard they were going to add all these scenes in. The problem was when they added one of the scenes where Spock's leaving the ship.
The first time he left the ship, they didn't have they ended up not having all the visual effects done in that.
So
scene.
you see all the scaffolding on the set and the doorway, but finally they eventually fixed it when they released it.
There are
the last time they
other
released it.
Yeah, they have the director's cut that they have. But it turns out that one of the things that, unless you read the novelization, one of the things about V'ger is that you actually see V'ger the way that he actually appears in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's always covered as this big cloud, and it turns out that if you are watching the scanning displays, one of the displays actually shows you what's inside the cloud, so that you get a good idea what V'ger looks like. And it turns out they fixed a lot of the visual effects. They added in the scenes, many of the scenes that had been cut out. They did a remarkable job in just...
when they did that final release of the director's cut, it was so cleaned up, and it was such a pleasure to watch.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that still, Star Trek the Motion Picture is a very flawed film. But it's flawed not from storytelling or from bad filmmaking. It's flawed because it's not connective to Star Trek in the right ways.
Yeah.
Because the characters are so detached from their characters that we knew and loved.
Yeah.
That it felt alien.
Yeah.
But it's damn good filmmaking. It's a great science fiction film. And I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And it comes straight from another episode of Star Trek that they dealt with the robot that they find in space that wants to find his maker. And Kirk ends up beating him by asking him a moral question that causes him to short out and explode. And it was clear that was the inspiration for this story.
I always thought that Star Trek the Motion Picture was like Star Trek's version of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When you watch the visuals, and I think Doug Trumbull involved with that?
Yeah, he was part of it.
Yeah, because he was one that created the pulsing, and where it looks like the ship, the interior of the ship's alive, and you're moving through it. There were other parts that were left out that were very reminiscent of 2001: A Space Odyssey when Spock is traveling through the interior workings of V'ger. This
entire movie would have been amazing in 1969. So they were 9 years after where they should have been for the kind of movie they were making.
Exactly. But it's still good.
It's still a good movie.
It was not 2001: A Space Odyssey. But then again, 2001: A Space Odyssey was not 2001: A Space Odyssey either. Yeah. It flopped. Yeah. A lot of people think, it is a masterpiece. It's absolutely a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite films of all time.
Another film you should watch.
It's one of the few films where you have no dialogue for the first 30 minutes of the movie. And it's crazy. The first words that are spoken are between Haywood Floyd and the Russian ambassador. Mm-hmm. And you go through an entire intro with no dialogue, just grunts and sounds and animals and music. The powerful music of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it's a powerful film. But what's funny is that what ended up making it any money in the 60s was it was marketed as a film to go watch when you're high on acid. Yeah. So people go see it high and drop some acid or get really high on weed or hash or whatever they were taking, and they go see the movie and they're like, dude, this is an awesome watch. And but for those of us who love good science fiction, and I read as a kid, I think I was 9 when I was 12 when I read the story that inspired 2001: A Space Odyssey.
The Sentinel.
The Sentinel. It was a short story about an obelisk, not a monolith, but an obelisk that was found on the moon. And I loved that story as a kid. And I've been an Arthur C. Clarke fan since. I still consider him, for me, the greatest science fiction writer of all time.
Again, someone that, if you don't know that name, You should be aware, and especially if you write for Star Trek Discovery, you should really be aware.
Yep.
Just saying.
Now, we go back to Star Trek, and Star Trek definitely took its cue from Arthur C. Clarke and from Kubrick with the motion picture. Robert Weiss, fantastic job. I believe that film deserved a couple of Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think it got anything, did it?
Nominations, yes. I don't know if it got any.
I don't think it won anything. And it should have won. For visual effects alone, Industrial Light and Magic and Doug Trumbull both worked on that film and gave us some of the best visuals. Industrial Light and Magic gave us the new Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah.
And we damn near got that ugly one that became the Discovery. In scene. And seriously, Ralph McQuarrie designed what was used for the Discovery. That was his design for the original Enterprise for the movie, the motion picture. And it was just a terrible design. I love Ralph McQuarrie, too.
Yeah.
Brilliant production artist. What else? What other trivia do you got in your head?
Let's see. Well, the thing about Star Trek: The Motion Picture is that it definitely was, as a film collectively, they used all of the stuff that they would have used for the original Star Trek television show sequel series called Phase 2 to make the movie. Well, all of that then was converted and turned into Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Star Trek: The Motion Picture is nothing more than an updated version
of
Phase 2 and Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It's tied to that first movie, which is the reason why they end up using the theme. And if you look at it, the costumes and the way that the Enterprise is laid out in The Next Generation is pretty much directly tied to how they did everything for the motion picture.
Only that, but they stole certain plot points and characters. Because the character of
Ilea
became
Counselor
Troy,
and the character of
Captain Decker became Commander Riker.
Yep, and both of them are named Will.
And the whole psychic thing, it was all there. Will, that's right. Yep. Both of them named Will. It was not accidental. That was absolutely on purpose by Gene Roddenberry himself. And he was taking that idea to this new show. And
and the other thing about Phase 2 is that Phase 2 really was the roadmap for Next Generation, because the character of Kirk would have been slightly different for Phase 2. In an effort to try to create a little bit of a difference from how Kirk was
a little more
in the
grounded
classic
character.
But the character of Picard is actually the Kirk character from Phase 2. Everything that you saw Picard do...
It's because he had been working as an admiral, and he was supposed to be more diplomatic, and they were going to go for that. And that's why when they adapted for Season 2 of Next Generation, my favorite episode in particular is the Devil. Is absolutely a Phase 2 script where the Vulcan was supposed to be the arbitrator, and Picard was going to go up against this person claiming to be the devil, wanting what was promised them for, was it 1,000 years of peace? And he was going to go about proving that she was fake. And obviously that character was based on Kirk. And you can even see it in some of the writing that this was not your standard dialogue that Picard would deliver. But it still worked with him because of what you were talking about, which was they were trying to write Kirk in a different way. And because Gene Roddenberry had it in his mind that by the point that they were doing this series, that there would be no more interpersonal conflict.
And that Kirk would slow down a little bit. He wouldn't be so bold.
Older, that's right.
And he'd be a little more measured in how he met his responsibilities. But that's the reason why you had Will Decker, who would go out and do all the action stuff.
And they did that on Next Generation.
And that's exactly what
Riker would go off on the adventures, and Picard would stay on the ship. And what's going on, Will? Make it so.
Yeah, that's it. I mean that is the connection. So there you go. That's Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Phase 2, and Next Generation. All interconnected by so many themes, including a musical theme. Ba, 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 ba.
Just good stuff.
Ba, 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 ba. Like If you want to hear that.
For all you writers in Star Trek Discovery, that's your homework assignment. Watch.
Yes. There will be a test on Friday.
Big one, too.
It is Friday. What?
Hey, you just passed your first test.
Yay! I know what day of week it is. So, anyway, that's it for today. That's Keith.
That's Gerry.
And this is Pop Culture Minefield. We're out of here. Get off the lawn.
Get off the lawn. Don't forget to subscribe.
Subscribe.
Send us questions.
Like us. We need love. Good night, guys. Y'all come back now.